Alpha male and red pill philosophy pushes the idea that women with high body count or a high number of past sexual partners are bad.
Women, your number of sexual partners is the most important indicator of your value. The lower your body count is, the higher your value. The higher your body count, the lower your value.
Well, guess what? A lot of guys don't want a girl when they've hooked up with so many dudes that would make most people's mouths drop to the ground.
And so when it comes to men and why we look at women with high body counts as less valuable, we think about it as, how many people do I have to share this girl with? How many people am I really have I shared this girl with too? So if she has 100 body counts,
way too many sexual partners. She's just way too promiscuous.
Women that have more notches, higher instances of STDs, abortions, plus there's a baggage issue.
How many partners are too many? Well, that tends to vary from person to person. To some people, it can be as low as 10.
I'm not even talking about 40 or 50 guys. I mean, I'm talking about even just 10 guys. Even just 10 guys is a lot, That's a lot. Because you're talking about 10 guys who got up inside of her and, basically cum blasted her, right?
To some people, even one is too many.
For me personally, even a low body count, that's not good enough for me. I need a woman with a B card. If you think that I'm going to give a woman that and her not be pure, that's just silly to me.
Now, to an extent, thinking this way is understandable. Everyone experiences jealousy, and no one enjoys thinking about their partner being railed by dozens and dozens of exes.
Unless you're into that sort of thing.
But what's unique about red pill philosophy is that it presents the impulse to be grossed out by your partner's sexual history, not as a matter of personal jealousy that you need to overcome, but as a logical conclusion based on concrete biological facts about how body count affects her objective worth.
Where a woman has many casual flings, that oxytocin actually burns out and they lose the ability to pair bond. It is the science of it.
This is wrong. Let's talk about why. So I'm sure you're expecting me to argue that women are free to express their sexuality however they want, and you have no right to judge the personal choices they make. And the thing is, that's not really the angle I want to approach this topic from. To be clear, I do believe that both those statements are correct. But what I'd actually like to argue is that high body count in women is good, actually. That from a strictly bottom line, straight male-centered, facts over feelings perspective, a female partner with a high body count is an active benefit to you. See, I don't really consider myself a feminist. In general, I do prefer to just state my beliefs and let other people determine what labels they think apply, but I just don't care that much about whether an idea is, offensive or problematic. I care about whether or not it's true. And here are my reasons why the idea that high body count makes women unworthy of being a serious partner is not. Number one, high body count makes women good at sex. So, you know what most adults can agree kind of sucks? Spending a really, really long time developing a highly refined skill set at a specific activity, and then doing that activity with someone who has no idea what they're doing. Anyone who goes to the gym a lot or has gotten really good at a musical instrument or whatever will know from experience that the more time you spend doing something, the better you get at it. Women who have fucked a lot have a clearer idea of what they like, what guys tend to like, and are just generally less shy about doing the communication necessary to make it happen. As her partner, you reap those benefits.
Okay, well, I feel like you're being disingenuous about the degree to which sex can be considered a refined skill. It doesn't take a PhD in advanced calculus to suck a dick. If you get with a chick who lacks sexual experience, she'll develop that experience with you.
Oh, absolutely. You most certainly can develop a really good thing with a less experienced or even completely inexperienced partner. No shade whatsoever to all the more sexually reserved queens out there. There's just kind of no substitute for when two world-class, battle-hardened experts get together and just shake the foundations of the earth. Because here's the thing, even if you manage to avoid falling into the trap of resenting your partner for being either sexually competent or sexually pure, but not both simultaneously. Number two, if you ever decide that you're into some weird ass shit, a high body count woman will probably be up for it. Everyone has sexual secrets, and everyone has something unusual that they're into. Probably even you. This is totally normal, and you may one day get to the point where you really need to experiment with it. Women with a lot of sexual experience typically understand the value of things like communication, being non-judgmental, being accommodating, and understanding the importance of kink in long-term sexual health. In other words, she's probably seen a lot of weird shit, and it's going to be a lot harder to surprise her. Your fucking diaper fetish or whatever it is you're into is probably not going to be the one thing that makes her run out of the room screaming. And while it probably isn't fair to assume by default that a low body count woman would be against it, she will probably take to it less confidently when the time comes to actually pull the trigger. Asking a woman to hook jumper cables up to your nuts is going to be a way more uncomfortable conversation dealing with someone still feeling her way through her third sex partner. With a more experienced woman, not only is it less likely that she'll be weirded out, you can probably assume that she'll actually be up for it, like enthusiastically. So this is where some red pillars will counter with their belief that when a quote carousel rider finds a long-term partner, she'll stop bringing the crazy shit to the bedroom because, you know, she's already locked you down and doesn't need to impress you anymore.
These gals reach a point that they've been in college, they've been wild, they get to their mid-20s, and that's when they start looking up. And they know that Chad and Tyrone, the bad boys, the guys they would hook up with in college, those guys are not the type that are going to settle down. They need a nice guy for that. So they go for a guy who they know will treat them like the queen, and they have to do the bare minimum to keep them. Therefore, those guys get the bare minimum in the bedroom.
To which I would respond, do you even think that women enjoy sex? I mean, do you honestly believe that a woman spends her adulthood developing an entire sexual persona and repertoire just for the sake of locking you down, but what she actually genuinely desires is to do 15 minutes of missionary once every month? How delusional and self-centered would you have to be to actually believe that? If you have experienced things slowing down in the bedroom over time, I think a better question to ask would be, what are you doing to make her want to get wild with you? Are you bringing your A game? Which brings me to my next point. Number 3, high body count women encourage traditionally masculine ideals by requiring you to develop your bedroom skills. So if you consistently display an attitude of not caring about your sexual skills or about her pleasure, she is going to get bored pretty quick. But I would argue that that's not actually a bad thing. See, one of the things that I actually really admire about red pill philosophy is the way that it encourages men to constantly better themselves, right? In the form of shit like, you know, working out, losing weight, pursuing your educational goals, and surrounding yourself with inspiring, motivated people who are going to benefit your life. It seems to me like the ideologically consistent approach to sexual skills would be to always be striving to improve yours, and to fill your life with skilled partners who are going to challenge you and bring out the best in you. Honestly, to do anything else would be like when I was a kid and claimed to be the literal best Street Fighter 2 player on earth, despite the fact that the only person I ever actually played against was my 6-year-old sister. Like, deliberately choosing activity partners who are less experienced and less skilled than you are, I don't know, just doesn't seem like the alpha or masculine approach to take. But even if that does sound too intimidating or like too much pressure on you, number 4, if you're having, you know, one of those days and just can't bring your A game to the bedroom, a high body count woman will probably be understanding. No matter how alpha or badass you are, there are going to be those days where you're just tired and can't get it up, or you blow your load in 10 seconds, or whatever. A woman who's experienced a lot of men has seen a lot of men at their weakest and most vulnerable. They're much more likely to see it for exactly what it is. You're just having one of those fucking days and it'll be back to normal tomorrow. In fact, a really experienced woman will probably respond to you losing your boner by like busting out the toys and just using her general knowledge to create an incredible experience for both of you even without your dick. Or hell, maybe you're just not in the mood and don't want to do anything that night. Experienced women who have prioritized healthy sexuality in their life are probably going to understand what should be obvious to everyone but unfortunately isn't, that consent is just as important for men as it is for women. That means that you aren't going to have to deal with any cry bully bullshit like, is it me? Is it because I'm not pretty enough? Or any of that fucking crap. This all applies just as much if you have like an STD or, you know, a micro penis or some other shit that you have no control over at all. A truly experienced woman will understand without you having to say one word of apologetic, reassuring bullshit exactly what the risks and implications of a partner with an STD are. Because at the end of the day, number 5, if you put just a marginal amount of effort into being good at sex, it'll probably put you into her like top 90th percentile of lovers. So when an alpha male red pill guy lets his guard down a little bit, he'll usually admit that part of what he doesn't like about high body count women is that they feel intimidated by the sheer volume of total studs they imagine she has in her past who they can't possibly measure up to.
Most average 27-year-old chicks have had well over 10 or 20 or 30 sex partners. This puts a lot of sexual pressure on you, because, you see, if you're an average Joe in bed, your sexual performance gets compared to all the dudes she's already slept with. You have to out every bad boy she's ever banged in her lifetime. And if you give her relatively mediocre sex, she will drop your ass.
Like, notice the language that Shannon Rice Lewis uses in this clip. He doesn't say, if you give a woman mediocre sex, you'll feel inadequate and self-conscious about it, because that would make him look weak and insecure. Instead, he says, if you give a woman mediocre sex, she'll drop you. Presumably because if that statement is true, then he's just being truthful by stating it. This is actually not true. I know this because there are some women out there to whom I have given incredibly mediocre sex. As far as I'm aware, I have never been dropped over it. I feel like there's a tendency to view a woman's sexual history like the progression of boss fights in a video game. Like each one is harder than the previous and sets you up with the new, very specific skills to fight the next. But that's really not how averages or sample size work. If a woman's been with a lot of men, a considerable amount of them are probably, you know, smarmy rich boys who gave her 5 thrusts with his half-erect dick before coming all over his own pants and falling asleep, or whatever. See, you have to keep in mind that unlike men, women are not guaranteed an orgasm or even necessarily pleasure in any given encounter. If you put just a modicum of thought and effort into finding out what she likes and making sure she gets off, you are probably going to come out of that encounter looking just fine. So no, a woman with a high body count isn't going to compare you to nothing but the biggest and best dicks she's ever had. But on the other hand, a woman whose only point of reference for how sex is supposed to feel is the magical, transcendent lovemaking she did with her one and only serious partner, you better believe you're getting compared to that shit. And that is going to be a much, much tougher sell for you. My point is that one way or another, you're going to get compared to something, unless you only date virgins.
I need one with a beat card.
And if you deliberately seek out virgins specifically because you're uncomfortable being compared to other people sexually,
You have to out every bad boy she's ever banged in her lifetime.
well, then you really can't consider yourself an alpha male, can you? And look, I get that performance anxiety is something that men struggle with, and society does a really terrible job at taking men's vulnerability seriously, especially related to this kind of shit. But as valid as that concern is, it's still your problem to handle, and you have to find a way to deal with it on your own. It isn't going to make you feel any better to pretend to be this alpha badass and to take your insecurities out on women in the form of subjecting them to humiliating judgments about their sex lives. And if you're still worried that a high body count means that she has some 10 out of 10 in her past that you'll never measure up to, just try to remember you have that too. Whether it's a super hot ex, someone you wanted but never got, a celebrity crush, or whatever, you have one, your partner has one, I have like 20, everyone has one. And provided we all trust each other to keep our memories and our fantasies in context, there is nothing noteworthy about it. Obviously, if you're dating someone who won't shut up about their ex, you should probably dump that person and move on. But however you think she should feel about you secretly fantasizing about your old high school crush, that's probably how you should start teaching yourself to feel about her having those same exact feelings of her own. But alright, let's stop fucking around and get down to brass tacks. Here's what I know most of you really care about. Number 6, it gets that phase of their life out of their system. Most one-night stands are average at best, especially for women who, just as a reminder, are not guaranteed an orgasm or even necessarily pleasure in any given encounter. For most women, once they get bored of the promiscuous lifestyle and find someone they can develop a solid, consistent rapport with, i.e. you, they don't go back. In my personal experience, there is no more dedicated a monogamist than a former wild girl who just got bored of it. Now, this is where most red pillars have their own way of characterizing this situation. To them, it's women riding the carousel when they're young, hitting the wall, and settling down with a beta provider. In other words, the Chads and Tyrones get her when she's young, hot, and fun. You get her when she's old and boring.
She has wasted away her entire 20s. Dating the bad boys, dating the alpha males, the jerks, the guys who never call her back. And now, going forward, she's going to be focusing on the beta males, all those guys that she used as an emotional tampon, all those guys that she ignored back then, all those guys that were invisible to her. Basically you. And she's gonna be looking at you like, yup, you're the one. Let's get married. I'm ready to do this. I've had my fun.
But you see, I think I have a simpler explanation. Everyone, regardless of gender, tends to prioritize short-term fun when they're young and long-term security when they're older. So the idea is that women like to fuck lots of hot dumbasses when they're young, then when it's time to get married, choose someone calmer and more stable. Okay, what about it? Women probably do this for the same reason that you don't, I don't know, work at Pizza Hut and drink Mike's Hard Lemonade every night anymore. Partying when you're young and then settling down when you're a little older is something that literally everyone does. How often did you used to say, I'm never gonna stop partying, man, or punk rock is who I am, I'm never gonna change. But now you're just some guy with a sweater and male pattern baldness, and you spend all your time posting memes about how tired you are at 9:30 at night. Why do you need an entire philosophy complete with its own vernacular just to explain that? Also, red pill guys will probably counter this with their evidence that high body count wives are more likely ability to cheat than low body count. And yes, I fully acknowledge that there is a credible-ish study that appears to show the opposite of what I'm arguing here. But below the surface, it gets a lot more complicated. For now, I'll just say that A, this study is not peer-reviewed. B, it only shows correlation, which, as we all know, does not equal causation. C, this chart is more a zigzag than a straight line and therefore doesn't show what red pillars claim it shows. D, high body count is just one of many factors that correlate with infidelity. And E, high body count men are more likely to be dissatisfied in a marriage than high body count women. The point is that if you find out that someone you're interested in had a wild phase back when she was in college, there is no reason to assume that she's any less serious about you than if she didn't. Suffice it to say that her interest in you is probably not due to her being too withered and ugly at the ripe old age of 32 or whatever to get meaningless sex from strangers anymore. Then, of course, there's red pillar's scientific trump card. The idea that, quote, according to science, high body count kills a woman's ability to pair bond through reduced oxytocin levels.
Where a woman has many casual flings, that oxytocin actually burns out and they lose the ability to pair bond. It is the science of it.
The more sexual partners a woman has had, the less able she is to pair bond.
You get this oxytocin release and you bond to this person and then you pull away. And then you do it again with somebody else and then pull away. And you do that enough times, you're not so sticky anymore. But they studied the effect of past sexual partners on a woman's ability to pair bond.
This is kind of like the crown jewel in red pillar's evidence that high body count women are bad and to be avoided. Thing is, this is pure, unadulterated, pseudoscientific bullshit. And as much as they like to bandy about the claim, countless scientific studies show there is literally not one single scientific study that shows what red pillars are claiming here. This is the epitome of source, trust me, bro. Actual scientists who study reduced oxytocin levels tend to examine things like the effects of the death of a parent, social rejection from peers, going from one long-term relationship to another long-term relationship, that kind of stuff. There are no real neuroscientists out there going, according to my calculations, females who have ridden the carousel with Chad and Tyrone are fucking... And now you might think...
You're just dismissing scientific evidence that doesn't dovetail with your own ideology.
To which I would say, prove me wrong. Please, link the peer-reviewed study in the comments. We will have an honest, good faith debate about the merits of that study. But until then, I have no choice but to view this claim as the rationalization that you need to excuse keeping yourself mired in jealousy so that you don't have to do what literally everyone on the planet has taught themselves to do with these feelings, which is grow a fucking dick about it and move on. In conclusion, so look, we're all grown-ass adults here, right? And the idea that women have an obligation to withhold themselves from adult relationships is not only condescending, absurd, and yes, sexist, it is intellectually beneath you. It's cutting off your nose to spite your face. Now, I really want to emphasize here that I'm not arguing that a woman isn't desirable unless she has a high body count. Most of what I've discussed here is related to a general sex-positive worldview, rather than an arbitrary number on an invisible flowchart. And sex positivity is something that anyone can learn. Also, as I always remind people, you are never obligated to date someone you're not attracted to. If you walk away from this still thinking that a high body count is gross, by all means, do not date someone with a high body count. But as long as millions of people are consuming rhetoric that's degrading to women and makes life harder for men, there needs to be someone out there injecting actual truth into the conversation. And the truth is that experience with relationships and sex makes a woman compassionate, engaging, rewarding, and appreciative, both in and out of the bedroom, and you're not making your life any more enjoyable by ruling it out in a potential partner. So I'm assuming that if you're watching this, you're the type of man who values true, traditional masculinity. You know, strength, competition, aloofness, rationality, being in total control of your emotions, you know, manly-ass masculinity. And I want you to ask yourself, does it uphold your standard of masculinity to run away from a perfectly healthy and satisfying relationship simply because she's seen a schlong or two in her day? Does it uphold your standard of masculinity to not be able to enjoy sex because you can't stop having intrusive thoughts of all the other guys she's been with before you?
Because all he can do is visualize her with Bob and her with other Chad and Tyrone types over the years.
As much as you may try to justify it scientifically with nonsensical jargon about reduced pair bonding capacity or whatever,
there are a number of studies that have been coming out lately saying that a woman actually retains the DNA of every single guy that she's had sex with. A lot of women have like another man's sperm and DNA like hiding behind her eyeball, like some sperm like to hide behind a woman's eyeball and latch onto that. You could read this stuff for yourself. It's crazy.
Oh yeah, Matt, that sounds totally crazy. You know as well as I do, no, of course it does not. These are irrational, emotional bitch boy responses. This is the literal antithesis of masculinity. It seems to me like the legitimately badass masculine view of a woman with a high body count is that she's developed the skills to be worthy of you. And now that she's proven herself worthy, you're eager to show her that you can fuck her shit up way harder than any of those other pussies she was with before. Think of like Buffy and Spike, or Arnold and Red Sonja.
If you yield only to a conqueror, then prepare to be conquered.
And I mean, be real. Look at these guys. Are these guys cool to you? Is this aspirational? Like sitting around in your car or in this dedicated studio space and having these long roundtable discussions about women and sex and relationships using the type of rhetoric that you and your buddies probably used in your treehouse when you were 11?
You've got 0 to 10 on the hot scale and a 4 to a 10 on the crazy scale. Of course, there's no woman that's not at least a 4 crazy.
Is that alpha? Honestly, which of these two approaches sounds more masculine to you? This?
If she was with guys before she got with you, there's no reason for you to give a shit about that. But you still do. The thought of another man planting his flag on your land is a fucking brutal feeling. Like, come on, bro, forget about it. And that's why guys out there, in general, most men would prefer marrying a virgin.
Or this.
How does a girl sound with a 2 as a body count nowadays? The men pray for 2.
Pray for what the fuck? I don't pray for 2. Then I have to like teach them shit.
Hearing about your partner having fucked a lot of people is going to ding your jealousy receptors no matter what gender you are. And there's basically nothing you can really do about it. But if you want to be in the grown-up world, you got to find a way to get over that shit. You want a brutal feeling?
A fucking brutal feeling.
Listen to Hate Eternal's landmark 2002 album, King of All Kings. Having your girlfriend talk about how she fucked the 1991 Denver Broncos is always going to be uncomfortable. No one likes that shit. But coming up with these convoluted explanations for why it's rational to be preoccupied with this well into your 30s, 40s, and even beyond that just gives off the impression that there's a step in maturity that you haven't gone through yet. You want to know how I know? Because when I was a dorky teenager and an undersexed early 20-something, I was just as obsessed with body count as these red pill guys are.
Wait, you did what with that Nathan guy? I thought you said your number was 11, you lying whore.
Dramatization may not have happened.
And I can tell you from experience, that is a miserable way to live. It didn't accomplish anything but making my life harder and lonelier. Once I started developing genuine sexual confidence and building up a body count of my own, I just stopped giving a crap. Nowadays, I tend to view a crazy sexual history the same way I view, I don't know, finding out someone used to smoke pot instead of go to science class. Like, is it a good idea to smoke pot instead of study science? Probably not. But like, cool, you're only young once, and as long as you didn't fuck your life up by not being careful enough, I'm glad you had fun times. And honestly, the fact that you're choosing this over just sucking it up and working through the jealousy of having a partner who may have fucked some people before you met, I don't know, that just kind of seems like a pussy thing to do. So guys, give yourselves permission to not worry about your partner's sexual history. I promise, you will be happier and more fulfilled that way. Come on, Kiwi, get it out of your system.